back to my channel. My name's Lucy and I am a qualified hypnobirthing and breastfeeding coach, and I empower women to have more positive birth experiences. And today I'm going to tell you my birth story with my son. He was my second baby, and it's the birth that kind of changed everything for me. It's the birth that was so healing and so empowering, especially after my first experience, which wasn't quite as positive. And I do have a previous video that goes through that experience as well. So I'll start where I started last time, which was pregnancy. So obviously, being a second pregnancy, I kind of knew a little bit of what to expect, and I had quite a smooth pregnancy, like nothing really crazy. My morning sickness wasn't even as bad as the first time, so I felt really lucky in that sense. And then the thing that kind of kept coming up for me was that I was being labelled as high risk because I'd had a previous emergency caesarean, and the word like uterine rupture was being thrown around quite a bit, and I decided to do my own research because I really didn't want to be kind of pushed into that hospital environment again if I didn't have to have that. And I did see online, and after I'd done my research, I kind of realised that there was a whole group of women that were having VBACs, so they were going for having a vaginal birth after caesarean, and that was a complete possibility, especially because I'd only had one caesarean before. And my chances were quite good because I'd had my caesarean was just because of like malposition, so it made me a really good candidate. So I spoke to my midwife about that, and I said, look, I'm adamant that I want to try and go for a vaginal birth. I don't want an elective caesarean, because those were the two options that were presented to me. You either have a planned caesarean, you know the day you're going to have your baby and it's all kind of planned out in advance, or you wait for spontaneous labour and you try for a vaginal birth. And it was very much framed to me of like, you can try, not, you know, you can have. It was like, you can try and have one. So I felt like my midwives didn't have 100% confidence in me that I was going to have this VBAC. But nevertheless, that's what I wanted. And I also didn't want to give birth on the labour ward again. I really didn't enjoy my first labour on the labour ward, and I pushed to give birth in the birth centre. So where I live, there is a birth centre that's located in the hospital, and literally you go in and then you go down one hallway and it's labour ward, and you just open the other door and it's the birth centre. So if anything did go wrong or I needed more intervention, it was right there, and I didn't have to travel anywhere and I'd be seen to straight away. So they agreed that I could go and book in at the birth centre, which I was thrilled about because it meant that I wasn't going to be on labour ward, and I would give birth in a place that was a bit more friendly to like hypnobirthing and natural pain relief methods. And it also meant that I could use a pool. That was the other big must on my list, was I really, really wanted to give birth in water and have a water birth, or at least use the pool at some point in my labour. So to prep for birth, I was searching around online, and on Instagram actually I came across a birth coach who specialised in VBACs. So I got in contact with her and loved her vibe, and it seemed like she could provide me with everything that I needed. So she was going to tell me all the hurdles that I was going to have to overcome, and how to kind of navigate my previous birth experience as well, because I was still holding on to a lot of feelings from that. So she kind of helped me prepare for birth, and it was the best thing I ever did, because I did it with my husband and we learned so much about labour, the process, what he could do. Like, in comparison to that online course that I did for my first birth, this just blew it out the water and really introduced me to what birth coaching and hypnobirthing is and the value of it. So I did that. So I was feeling really, really good at the end of my pregnancy. I was feeling really confident, like looking forward to birth actually. So I went into labour at 38+6, and I was in complete denial that I was in labour, because I think I'd gone quite overdue with my first. I just thought maybe that would happen again, although I was massive the second time around. I was getting these little twinges, and I remember it was at dinner time. We had our toddler. She was just coming up to 2 at the time, and we were feeding her dinner, and I was like, oh, got a little twinge there. But I'd been having like Braxton Hicks, so I thought, oh, it's probably just like a big one of those, you know, I am getting towards the end now. And then, you know, a few minutes later, I felt another one. I was like, oh, could it? And my husband, because he'd done that birth coaching with me, he was like, it's labour. Like, don't you think that this could be like very, you know, small contractions? And I was like, nah, probably just Braxton Hicks, like, it'll go away. Let's give Sage, my daughter, a bath, like put her to bed, you know, let's just do her bedtime routine. So we ended up doing all that, and I was having these kind of mild pains on and off, but I just didn't think it was anything. I just don't know why. I was just so in denial that I was gonna, you know, I was in labour. So I was having these contractions, put my little girl to bed, and we decided to come downstairs, and the pains were getting like a bit closer together, and my husband just went into like full birth partner mode, and he started to gather. He put the TV on, like my favourite show that I said I was going to watch when I was in labour, early labour. He like suddenly dimmed the lights, and there was like my candles were like put out everywhere. He kind of was doing it like without me sort of knowing. And then we put on my playlist, because I really wanted to listen to some music. So I was listening to my birth playlist, and I put together like a really long list of lovely songs I wanted to listen to. But this one song, which was Bon Iver's Roslyn, just had that beat that was kind of vibing with my then contractions. And I was sat on the floor, cross-legged, like he was stroking my hair, and I was kind of just breathing to these contractions. And I think I'd half admitted to myself, like, okay, this is probably early labour now. And I was kind of vibing along to this song, and I just kept playing it on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, on repeat. Just that song, closed my eyes, swaying around in the dark, and it was lovely. And then I would say we were doing that for a couple of hours, and I was like, I still don't know if it's labour. I was just convinced that it was going to stop, and it was all just going to be just like a false start. I don't know why I had that feeling, but I was just convinced that this wasn't it, and that it was all just going to stop. And then quite suddenly the contractions really ramped up, and my mum was coming from she lives in a town about an hour away, and she was on standby. Like Nick had said to her, my husband had said to her, I think things are kind of, you know, going to be going tonight, so can you get ready to come over to look after our little girl while we go? And the plan was for me to stay at home for as long as possible before I needed to go anywhere. And they just really ramped up, and the pain was like, you know, really, I was having to really breathe through these contractions now. And there were some roadworks on the road, and it took my mum ages to get here. And by the time she got here, I was already out the front door, like trying to get into the car, because I just was so desperate to get to the birth centre. One, to kind of have someone tell me, yes, you're in labour, just because I was in denial, and two, maybe to get some gas and air, because it was, you know, quite intense at this point. But I was in a good mood. I was in a good place. So we got to the hospital. We rang up and said, you know, these are my contractions, and they were like, yeah, definitely come in, especially because you're high risk and you are a VBAC candidate. Like, we'd like to see you as soon as possible. So we got in the car, got into the triage, and they said, look, we're really sorry. We know you're booked in to go to the birth centre, but that's not going to happen. You have to go to labour ward. you have to go to labour ward. Just crushing to me, because it was the one place I really didn't want to be. But I remembered my hypnobirthing and I reframed that thought, and I was like, we've just got to get on with it. There's nothing I can do about it, you know, let's just go. And what had happened is the previous day, a towel had got sucked into one of the birth pools and the whole ceiling had like caved in. So like the whole birthing centre was just closed. It was just absolutely ridiculous. So they put us in a side room where they said they wanted to do a vaginal exam. She watched me have a few contractions, was like convinced that I was in labour, and then she wanted to do a vaginal exam. And I really thought long and hard about this, because at this point I knew the benefits and the risks of doing that, but I did want to kind of know how far along I was. And she did the exam and she said, you're 5 centimetres, like you've made it all the way to halfway at home on your own without any pain relief. And honestly, it just made me so happy. And I said, am I going to get my own room now? And she said, yeah, we've got the room, but it's not got a birth pool. So again, I had to use my hypnobirthing techniques to reframe that thought, kind of swallow my disappointment that not only was I not going to be in the birth centre, where the midwives are more kind of understanding towards hypnobirthing, but I also wasn't going to have the birth pool that I so desperately wanted. They left me in that room for a little while they were kind of sorting out the room. And then she said, by some miracle, the lady that was in that room has literally just shot her baby out, and we're just cleaning the room now. So you can have the one room on labour ward that has a birth pool. And I was like, yes, it's going to happen. I'm getting the room with the birth pool. And they were like, we're going to fill it up straight away for you because you're already at 5 centimetres. So like as soon as you step in the room, you know, like we'll be getting in there, which was amazing. So we got into the room, kind of started to set up, and I had my birth plan with me. So like they knew I was going to be hypnobirthing. They knew that I wanted an intervention-free birth. They knew that. And I could kind of see the reluctance on their faces already. It was like, oh, she's that mum, like she's going to be that person. But I didn't care. This is my choice, and it was evidence-based. You know, I'd done loads of research. I knew the stats. I wasn't making these decisions willy-nilly. They were for so many different reasons. And the first kind of hurdle that we came up against was monitoring. So they were desperate to put me on the continuous monitor, which is like where they put the belts around your tummy and they monitor you and you can't really move around. And I said no to that because I wanted to be mobile, and I also wanted to use the birth pool. And I said that you can monitor me every 15 minutes. Anyway, there was a lot of back and forth because they really want you to be on continuous monitoring when you've already had a caesarean. So I said, what I'll do is I'll do your continuous monitoring for 15 minutes, and then if everything's normal, we'll go to intermittent monitoring, which is where they use the handheld Doppler. And they said yes, they agreed to that. So we did that. There was nothing wrong, so I got into the birth pool, and I was like, I've made it. I'm having the labour that I've always dreamed of. It might not be at home and it might not be on the birth centre, but it was in a pool. The lights were dimmed and I was with my husband doing my breathing. I had my affirmations and my music playing, and it was just beautiful for about 15 minutes. Then they said that they'd looked at the monitor again and they weren't happy. Because I'd been moving around, the monitor had been slipping, but they wouldn't listen to me, and they said that baby's heart rate was a bit erratic, and so was mine. So they told me that my heart rate was quite high, but it had been in pregnancy. So I'd been experiencing these episodes of high heart rate in the evenings of my pregnancy, in sort of like the last trimester, and my midwife had told me it's perfectly normal, it's perfectly fine. It's probably a little bit of stress with just, you know, a little bit of overexertion, but it's not dangerous and you're absolutely fine. But they wouldn't listen to me, and they were starting to kind of put the pressure on that something, this kind of unknown thing that they wouldn't label, something was wrong. And I knew the signs to look out for uterine rupture, and I honestly thought that I was fine. So we had this kind of massive back and forth with the midwives, and they wanted me to get out the pool. And I said, I don't want to. I think everything is fine. Like, you know, when you're monitoring the baby on the handheld Doppler, everything sounds normal. So, like, what's the problem? And we had a doctor come in, and she told me that basically I was killing my baby, and that I was making choices that would really increase the risk of stillbirth. And I knew this might happen. I'd been prepared for it. We went over it in my birth coaching course, but nothing quite prepares you for when a doctor actually tells you that when they say that word, stillbirth, when, you know, it's incredibly upsetting. So my husband ended up asking that doctor to leave, and the midwife along with her that wasn't on my side. And we had the matron come. They left us for ages on our own. We didn't know what was happening. After telling me that I was killing my baby, they just left the room for like 45 minutes. And they came back in and they said, look, your husband's asked for a different midwife. We can't provide you with one. And we find that request so rude that if he makes any other slip-ups, we're going to ask him to leave and you'll be giving birth here on your own. And she said, you don't want to give birth on your own, do you? And obviously I didn't, and I was quite emotional at this stage because, you know, I was in the throes of labour. I was probably just about to transition, and here they are telling me that my husband has to leave. I did end up getting out of the pool just to appease those midwives, and I went back on the monitor, but I said I'm not going to lay down. I want to be able to move around. So I moved around for a long time. I created my cosy environment. I remember putting my husband's hoodie that he brought with him over my head to make it really, really dark, and I was kind of leaning on the bed, and I could smell like my husband's cologne. It smelled of him, all cozy, and I was like doing my breathing, and I was chugging the gas and air by now. I hadn't had any other pain relief, and I was chugging the gas and air. And then it got to about 16 hours in total of labour, and they wanted to do another check, an internal exam. And when they did that, they said, oh, you're still at 5 centimetres, maybe 6 at a push. And obviously it'd been quite a long time since I'd come in to the hospital and still stayed at 5 centimetres. And I tried to explain to them that the conditions that I'd been put in the hospital weren't really conducive to me dilating. And, you know, they'd literally just been minutes before telling me that I was killing my baby. Like, my body is not relaxed enough to dilate at the pace that you would like me to. But they weren't really having it, and they put pressure on me to break my waters. That's the next step. They wanted to intervene, and they wanted to break my waters, which they said would hopefully put then more pressure on the cervix to dilate. And again, we'd gone through this in the birth coaching course, and I knew that that probably wasn't the right thing to do, especially in my case, because I had this scar on my uterus. So, and I'd also had my waters broken in my previous birth, and that didn't help me at all. I think it just did the opposite. So I declined, and I said, no, thank you, I just need more time. And they were really ramping the pressure up. Like, a doctor was there. They really wanted me to have intervention. They really wanted to interfere with my labour when nothing was like physically wrong. Because I said, is baby in distress? And they said, no, but we want you to have your waters broken. So I was there on the bed, and I just felt this immense pressure. And I felt this immense, oh no, it's happening again. And I kind of went into myself, because I was just thinking to myself that I'm going to have a repeat of last time. This is how it was last time. If anything, it's worse, especially because I'm more informed this time. So I asked them if I could have half an hour or 10 minutes even, just to think about it, and they all left the room. And the way they were like speaking to me and the way that their body language was like, oh, you know, like I was just a problem. And I was speaking to Nick about it, and Nick said, what do you want to do, Lucy? I'll support you, whatever it is. And I said, I don't want to have my waters broken. I don't want to be interfered with. I can't do this again. I don't want to have this labour again. I can't have a repeat of last time. And I said, I just need to just have a minute. And I just closed my eyes. And I just really thought to myself, what is it that I want from this labour? What do I want to do? And did you know what? I was holding on to so many expectations about this labour and what it meant about me as a mum, what it meant about me as a woman. And I think I'd put subconsciously so much pressure on myself to have a vaginal birth, and it was somehow going to redeem me from my last birth, when in that moment I realised that there was nothing to redeem. I'd done an amazing job the first time with the information that I had and the resources I had available to me, and I'm doing an amazing job now. And I, in that moment, decided that I didn't want any more intervention, and I wanted this to stop, and the only way I could stop it was to elect for a caesarean. And I thought, you know what, I just want to meet my baby. So I opened my eyes and I was crying, and I said to Nick, I'm really sorry, but I think I want a caesarean. He was like, why are you sorry? And I just said, you know, I've dragged you to these birth coaching courses, these classes with me, week after week. And we've built up for months and months this plan about how we're going to aim for this vaginal birth and do everything possible to have a natural birth with no intervention. And here I am, just throwing that all away. And we had a discussion about it, and he was like, if that's what you want, then that's your choice. And then it dawned on me that all the birth coaching that I'd had wasn't about how I was giving birth. It was about me feeling empowered to make my own decisions, and knowing that I had the evidence and all the information to make my own choice, whatever that was. And I thought, yeah, do you know what, like, I'm going to give birth on my own terms, and I want to meet my baby, and I want a caesarean. So when they came back in after the 10 minutes or whatever it had been, they were absolutely shocked when I said, I want a caesarean. And they said, but you've been planning and telling us that you want this intervention-free birth, and now you're saying that you want a caesarean. And I said, yeah, but I've realised I want to give birth on my own terms, and you guys keep pressuring me for intervention I don't have, and I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be faffed around with and prodded and poked like I was last time to potentially just have another caesarean anyway. I just want to elect to have a caesarean and have the caesarean that I wrote in my birth plan. I wanted a gentle caesarean with my own music playing, you know, photos being taken. And they were like, fine, we'll go and get the obstetric team. So a new team came in, and it was the team obviously that were doing the caesareans that day, and they were a breath of fresh air. I had a new midwife who'd just come on shift. She was like, right, I've read your notes, I've heard from the other girls, like, what's been going on? We're doing a caesarean. And I said, yeah, I'm going to meet my baby soon. She said, great. We read your birth plan. We know what you want for your caesarean because you've written it all down, and we're very happy to meet your needs. And it was the first time somebody had said that to me. And it was so overwhelming that it was actually the obstetric team that were more compassionate than the midwifery team. And she said, we've read your notes and everything, and you said that you want the lights dimmed. And she said, but it's a beautiful day today. And it was, the sun was shining, and it was this beautiful, like, early spring day. She said, and the view from the room that you'll be having your caesarean in is beautiful, and you'll be able to see the trees outside the window. are you happy to change that part of your birth plan and actually like look out the window, and we won't make it shady? And I said, oh, that would be lovely. And when I went into I had to wait an hour for my caesarean, so I just carried on with the gas and air. I was absolutely high on oxytocin because I knew I was going to meet my baby so soon. Those last few contractions were painful, but what was getting me through is like, you know, an hour to meet my baby, 45 minutes to meet my baby. So they took me up, and when I got in there, they were already like setting everything up. They had a speaker going so that I could play my music. They gave me my spinal tap. They were so gentle and careful with me. The midwife made sure that I had my gas and air right up until the last minute of putting in my epidural, whereas before they'd taken it off me and sort of left me to it. Whereas she took such gentle care of me. It was overwhelming, and the team were just lovely. The lady lowered her mask to like introduce herself to me and said, I'm going to be the lady delivering your baby today. Everybody said hello, showed me their faces, and it was just cheery. It was lovely. So my little boy was delivered via really a gentle caesarean section, so they let him kind of come out himself, and I have pictures of that. And they said it was a bit of a rough caesarean because I had a lot of scar tissue from the first time, because that was also a rough caesarean, and they had to really push down and like really jiggle him out, so it was quite a difficult caesarean for them to do. And nevertheless, it was beautiful. They put him on my chest, and Nick cut the cord, and then I said in my birth plan, if baby is fine and everything is fine, like me too, I want to hold my baby on my chest straight away. I don't want you to take him off and do weighs or checks or anything. Like, I want him straight away. We didn't know what we were having, so it was a nice surprise that we had a little boy, and they put him straight on me, cleaned him off on my chest, and put a little hat on him, and then he had his first feed while I was getting stitched up. It was amazing. And they also were really good with my wishes about my placenta. So I was actually having my placenta encapsulated. They were amazing about that. They took all the forms, they checked the placenta, they boxed it all up for me. The courier came and got that. And there was no funniness. Like, there was no feeling of like, oh, here's her list of demands, like it was in the labour ward. They just understood that I had preferences of how I wanted to give birth, and as long as it was within the realms of safety, they were very happy to oblige me. And I wish everybody had that experience. I wish people knew they had options, and I wish everybody had that experience that I had. That room was so filled with love when my little boy was born. It was palpable. It was surreal for all of us. And the midwife who was with me said that was really special. Like, she was kind of a bit teary. The obstetrician was like, this is a special, you know, it was special. I think everybody in the room could feel it. And then I was wheeled off to postnatal. They were thrilled that I'd already been feeding, and it was just beautiful. I recovered so much quicker after that caesarean than I did my first. I was up and walking within like hours. They were shocked. They were like, I can't believe that you just wouldn't think that you'd had a caesarean, like, you know, hours ago. It was just beautiful. It was such a healing experience for me, and it changed the course of my life, because it was from that experience that I really understood what birth coaching was, and that I understood the power of hypnobirthing. And then I went on to train to do what I do now, which is to give other couples the knowledge to have that experience for themselves. And it really doesn't matter what you're going for, whether it's a home birth or elective caesarean or anything in between. you can have an amazing positive experience, even if it doesn't follow your birth plan or the path that you expect. You know, birth rarely does do that, but there are tools that you can use to remain calm and have an amazing experience, just no matter how it goes. So I hope that you enjoyed that, and please like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. I'd love to know just what you think of it, and I will see you in the next video.